Yo, what's good, Commanders Nation? If you're watching this, it's because you already know this offseason is going to define everything for us. We're talking about decisions that could literally change the direction of this franchise for the next 3 years, fam. And today we've got 3 stories that are going to blow your mind. From coaching staff moves nobody saw coming, to free agents who would flip our defense upside down, and a decision on Debo Samuel that's gonna split the fan base right down the middle. Listen, after that 5-12 season that hurt us deep, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters know there's zero room for error. Every move matters, every signing matters, every draft pick matters. And what's coming in the next few weeks is gonna be crucial. Bro, so buckle up because we're breaking it all down. Real analysis, fan emotion, and the truth you need to hear. Let's get into it. Bro, when I tell you Dan Quinn didn't come here to play, I mean it. We just found out the Commanders are doing a massive sweep of the defensive coaching staff. And this ain't just a tweak. Fam, this is a full-on rebuild. Nikki Javala reported that Washington is parting ways with several assistants, including a franchise legend, Ryan Kerrigan. Yeah, you read that right. Ryan Kerrigan, the all-time sack leader in this organization, is out. Also gone are Jason Simmons, defensive pass game coordinator, Sherrod Floyd, assistant D-line coach, and Pete Arnegian, player development coach. This is heavy, man, but here's the plot twist that changes everything. Dan Quinn finalized the hire of Daronte Jones as the new defensive coordinator. And before you say who, let me break down why this move could be genius or a massive gamble. Daronte Jones comes from Minnesota, where he was the defensive pass game coordinator and DBS coach under Brian Flores. And you know what that Vikings defense did in 2025? They allowed the second fewest passing yards in the entire league, bro. That's not luck. That scheme, that's coaching, that's talent development. Jones is a direct disciple of Brian Flores. And if you know Flores' style, you know we're talking about disguises, creative pressure packages, and a philosophy of confuse the QB on every snap. The Vikings ran schemes where they showed one thing pre-snap and executed something totally different post-snap. That's exactly what we need, fam, because our defense last year was predictable, slow, and honestly embarrassing. We finished dead last in total yards allowed. Dead last, bro. That's unacceptable for a team with real aspirations. Now, here's the part that's got me torn, and I know a lot of y'all feel the same. Daronte Jones has never been a full-time DC in the NFL. Yeah, he's got DC experience at LSU, where he helped develop talent that made it to the league. But this is a whole different level. This is the NFL, where every week you're facing Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, elite quarterbacks who will torch you if your scheme isn't tight. And Dan Quinn, after missing out on bigger names like Brian Flores or Mike McDaniel. Yeah, McDaniel was rumored, bet on Jones. That tells me one of two things. Either Quinn fully believes in his vision, or we're in experimental rebuild mode and Quinn knows his future is riding on this. Because let's be real, fam. Dan Quinn is on the hot seat. We went from playing in the NFC Championship in 2024 to finishing 5-12 in 2025. That's a brutal drop-off. And if we don't make the playoffs in 2026, Quinn probably won't be here in 2027. It's that simple. So this Daronte Jones hire isn't just a coaching move, bro. It's an existential bet. Quinn is saying, I believe in this system, I believe in this guy, and we're rebuilding this defense from the ground up. And speaking of rebuilding, losing Ryan Kerrigan hurts, man. Kerrigan is Washington. He's the all-time sack leader. A guy who repped this franchise with class for years, and now he's out as part of this reset. That tells you Daronte Jones wants HI's people, his philosophy, HI's culture. No room for nostalgia. And as painful as that is, it's the right move if we want to really compete. Jason Simmons is also out. And that's interesting because he played a big role in developing some of our DBS. But if Jones is bringing in a whole new system from Minnesota, it makes sense he'd want coaches who already know his playbook, who understand his disguises, who know how to teach those concepts. Sheriff Floyd and Pete Onegin are gone too. And while their roles were more specific, it all points to the same thing. Clean slate. Now, what does this mean for our current players? Bobby Wagner is still an elite piece, and a vet like him can adapt to any system. But the young guys, the DBs, the linebackers, they're going to have to learn a whole new playbook. They're going to have to understand Flory-style concepts that are complex, bro. It's not just cover your zone. It's read the QB, adjust in real time, and execute the perfect disguise. That takes high football IQ and practice time. And here's the problem. We don't have time, fam. The 2026 season kicks off in a few months. The draft is right around the corner. And with the number 7 overall pick, Adam Peters and Daronte Jones are going to have to draft someone who can contribute right away. We can't afford a long-term project. We need an edge rusher, a cornerback, or a safety who can make an impact from week 1. Because let's be clear, our defense in 2025 wasn't just bad in total yards. We were one of the worst in EPA allowed per dropback 0.186, and in explosive pass rate allowed 16.6%. That means opposing QBs were torching us with big plays. That means our pass rush wasn't generating consistent pressure. That means our DBs couldn't cover. Everything was broken. So Daronte Jones comes in with a clear mandate. Fix the pass defense, generate more turnovers, and cut down on those explosive plays that killed us all year. And if he can bring even 70% of what he did in Minnesota, we'd be in a much better spot. But that's a big if, fam. Because it's one thing to coordinate part of a defense under Brian Flores, and another thing to be the main brain, the one making all the calls, the one adjusting on Sundays. And don't forget the context. Dan Quinn is a defensive-minded head coach. He's not going to be completely hands-off. He's probably going to have input on the game plan, on the adjustments, on key decisions. So the relationship between Quinn and Jones is going to be crucial. If there's chemistry, if there's mutual trust, this could work beautifully. But if there's ego clashes or philosophical differences, this could blow up fast. And bro, imagine if this doesn't work. We'd be looking for a new DC and a new HC in 2027. That would be a total disaster, but I want to stay optimistic, fam. I want to believe Daronte Jones is the right guy for this moment. I want to believe his time under Flores gave him the tools to handle this responsibility. I want to believe Dan Quinn did his homework and saw something special in Jones that the rest of us don't see yet. Because if this works, if our defense jumps from number 32 in total yards to top 15, if we start forcing turnovers and winning games with defense, bro, we'd be right back in the playoff conversation for real. And that's the bet, fam. All or nothing. Daronte Jones has a golden opportunity to prove he can be an elite DC in this league. Dan Quinn has a shot to save his job and show he can rebuild a broken defense. And we, the fans, have to trust the process and hope these moves take us back to where we belong. Fighting for the NFC East, fighting for the playoffs, fighting for a Super Bowl. But man, if this doesn't work, it's going to be a long, long year. And we all know it. All right, bro. Now let's talk free agency. Because this is where Adam Peters can either work some magic or make mistakes that haunt us for years. And one of the most interesting names being linked to us right now is Trey Hendrickson, the edge rusher from the Cincinnati Bengals. Pro Football Focus listed him as a perfect fit for the Commanders. And honestly, fam, it makes all the sense in the world. First, the context. Von Miller led our team in sacks this past season, and he's a free agent. We don't know if he's coming back. We don't even know if we want him back at that price. And while Miller had his moments, he wasn't the dominant game wrecker we needed week in and week out. So if he walks, we've got to replace that production. And Trey Hendrickson, when healthy, is one of the best edge rushers in the entire league, bro. Now, 2025 wasn't his best year. Gotta keep it real. Hendrickson only played 7 games due to a core injury that required surgery. He finished with just 4 sacks, which is low by his standards. But here's the part nobody can ignore. When he was on the field, his PFF pass rush grade was 90.0. That's elite, fam. That means even though the sack numbers weren't there, his pressure, his win rate, his impact in the pocket were top tier. And if we rewind to 2024, Hendrickson was first-team All-Pro. That year, he had 83 pressures. Tied for the most in the entire NFL. His pass rush win rate of 20% was third best in the league. Bro, those are superstar numbers. That's the kind of guy who can single-handedly wreck an opposing game plan. And that's exactly what we need. Because let's be real, our defense in 2025 was trash against the pass. We allowed 0.186 EPA per dropback, near the bottom of the league, and a 16.6% explosive pass rate allowed, also terrible. Why? Because we didn't generate consistent pressure. Opposing QBs had all day to find open receivers. And when there's no pressure, it doesn't matter how good your DBs are. Someone's going to get open eventually. That's just how modern football works, fam. So bringing in Trey Hendrickson isn't just about adding a pass rusher. It's about changing the entire dynamic of our defense. It's about forcing QBs to make quicker decisions. It's about getting more sacks, more hurries, more incompletions. And that, in turn, helps our DBS because they don't have to cover as long. It's a domino effect. Bro. Now, what's the catch? Because there's always a catch, fam. First, Hendrickson is coming off an injury. Core surgery is no joke. That affects explosiveness, leverage, the ability to bend the edge. And while PFF says his grade was high, we need to see it over a full season to know if he's really back to 100%. Second, Hendrickson turns 31 in 2026. Not old for an edge rusher, but not young either. We're talking about giving a multi-year deal to someone in the second half of their prime. That's a calculated risk. And third, the money. Hendrickson made $17.5 million in 2025. What's he going to ask for in free agency? Probably something similar. Maybe a little less if teams are worried about the injury. But still, we're talking $15 million plus per year. And while the Commanders have cap space, a lot actually, we've got to be smart. Because we also need to sign other free agents, extend key players, and leave room for the draft. But here's my argument, fam. If Trey Hendrickson is willing to sign for 3 years, $45 million with reasonable guarantees, I do it without hesitation. Why? Because an elite edge rusher is one of the most valuable positions in modern football. Just look at Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa. Those dudes change games. And Hendrickson, when healthy, is in that conversation. And there's history here, bro. Hendrickson almost became a Commander last year. He requested a trade out of Cincinnati because contract talks got ugly. Washington was interested, but in the end, the Bengals and Hendrickson worked out a short-term deal. But now, with that deal expiring and Cincinnati likely not re-signing him, Hendrickson is hitting the open market. And if we were an option before, why not now? Plus, think about it from Hendrickson's perspective. He wants to win. He wants to be on a competitive team. And even though the Commanders had a rough 2025, we still have pieces. We've got Jaden Daniels, if he's healthy. We've got Terry McLaurin. We've got Bobby Wagner. We've got draft capital. With the right moves, we can be a playoff team in 2026. And Hendrickson knows that FAM.now. Are there other options in free agency? Sure, but most of the top edge rushers are either going to get re-signed or hit with the franchise tag. Hendrickson is one of the few legit guys who's actually going to be available. And if Adam Peters can convince him to come to Washington with A fair contract and a clear vision of how he fits into Daronte Jones' system. Bro, this could be a home run, because imagine this. Hendrickson on one edge, a first-round rookie, if we draft an edge, on the other, and Bobby Wagner in the middle calling the shots. That would be a front seven completely different from what we had in 2025. That would be a front seven that can go toe-to-toe with anyone in the NFC. And bro, if Hendrickson gets back to his all-pro form, man, we'd be talking about one of the best free agency moves this franchise has made in years. But I've also got to keep it real, fam. There's risk. There's uncertainty. And if Hendrickson signs and doesn't produce, if the injury lingers, if he doesn't fit in Jones' system, we'd be stuck with a heavy contract and none of the impact we were hoping for. That's the gamble of free agency. But in my opinion, it's a gamble worth taking, because the alternative is staying where we are. And where we are, we're not winning anything, bro. Straight up. So if Adam Peters has the chance to bring in Trey Hendrickson, I say do it. I say take the risk. I say bet on the talent, the experience, the upside. Because in this league, if you don't take risks, you stay stuck. And we can't afford that. FAM.so, cross your fingers. Say a prayer to whoever you pray to and hope Adam Peters works his magic in free agency. Because if Trey Hendrickson ends up in a Commander's uniform, bro, our defense is going to be way more dangerous in 2026. And that's exactly what we need to get back to being real contenders. All right, fam. Now let's get into the story that's probably going to spark the most debate in the comments. Debo Samuel and his future with the Commanders. Because Debo is a free agent this offseason, and according to John Keane from ESPN, this is the biggest roster decision we're facing right now. And honestly, bro, I'm torn. Completely torn. First, the facts. Washington traded a fifth-round pick to get Debo last year, and he responded with 72 catches, second most in his career, 727 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Those are solid numbers, fam. Not elite, but solid. Debo was consistent. He was professional, and in a season where everything went wrong, he was one of the few bright spots on offense. But here's the issue. Debo made $17.5 million in 2025. And while he had a good season, is it worth paying him that again? Because let's be real, bro. Debo just turned 30. He's not a young receiver with upside. He's a vet in the second half of his career. And while he can still produce, his best football is probably behind him. And then there's Terry McLaurin, who signed a long-term extension last year. Terry is our WR1, no question. So the real question is, does it make sense to pay $17 million plus for a WR2 when we've already got so much money tied up in McLaurin? Because if you combine both contracts, we'd be investing a ton in the receiver position. And that limits what we can do in other areas, fam. John Keane said it perfectly. The Commanders need another true receiver, one with downfield speed opposite Terry McLaurin, but Samuel could still help as a versatile chess piece. The question is cost, and that's exactly the issue, bro. Debo's not a deep threat. He's a YSC guy, a slot receiver, a gadget player. He's not going to stretch the field vertically like a Tyreek Hill or a CeeDee Lamb. So if what we need is a true WR2 with speed, Debo ain't the answer, but... And here's the other side of the argument, fam. Debo is versatile. He can line up in the slot, outside, even in the backfield on certain plays. He's a mismatch nightmare for linebackers and safeties. And in an offense that needs creativity, that needs playmakers who can do damage after the catch, Debo still brings value. Especially if Jaden Daniels comes back healthy and needs reliable third down options. So what do we do, bro? Because this decision isn't black and white. There are valid arguments on both sides. If we bring Debo back, we're betting on continuity, chemistry, and a vet who knows the system. But we're also limiting our financial flexibility and probably closing the door on bringing in a younger, more explosive WR in free agency or the draft. And if we let Debo walk, we free up cap space, but we lose a proven playmaker. And in a league where good receivers are hard to find, that's a risk, fam. Because there's no guarantee we'll find someone better on the market. There's no guarantee a rookie WR will produce right away. And if our offense struggles again in 2026, we're all going to be asking why we let Debo go. Bro, this is one of those decisions where no matter what you do, half the fan base is going to be mad. My personal take, fam, is this. If Debo is willing to take a pay cut and sign for $10 to $12 million per year, I bring him back. At that price, his versatility and experience are worth it. But if he wants $15 million or more, I let him walk. Because at that price, I can use that money to bring in an edge rusher like Trey Hendrickson, or a top-tier corner, or invest in the offensive line. And those positions, in my opinion, are more critical to our long-term success. Because here's the reality. Bro, the reason we failed in 2025 wasn't because we lacked talent at receiver. It was because our defense was awful. It was because our O-line couldn't protect Jaden. It was because we had key injuries at the worst times. So if I have to choose between paying Debo $17 million or using that money to fix the defense, I'm choosing defense every time, and Debo knows this, fam. He knows there are probably teams out there willing to pay him more. Contenders who need a veteran WR for a playoff push. Teams with more cap space than us. So even if Debo likes being in Washington, if another team offers him $18 million over 2 years, he's probably gone. And I don't blame him, bro. This is a business. He's got to secure his financial future. So the real question is, how much do we value continuity versus flexibility? How much do we value having Debo on the roster versus having $15 million extra to spend elsewhere? And that's a question Adam Peters and Dan Quinn have to answer in the next few weeks, fam. Because the clock is ticking. Free agency is coming fast. And if we wait too long, we could lose Debo and miss out on signing other quality free agents. So Peters has to make a call soon. He's got to sit down with Debo, have a real convo about expectations and money, and decide if there's a mutual fit. And if the answer is no, if Debo walks, bro, we've got to be ready to move fast. We need a plan B, whether that's a WR in free agency, Christian Kirk, Darnell Mooney, someone like that, or AWR in the draft. If there's someone we like in the second or third round, or just trusting that the young receivers already on the roster can step up, but we can't go into 2026 with Terry McLaurin and a bunch of question marks. Because if Jaden Daniels comes back healthy and doesn't have weapons, we're wasting another year of his development. And that would be unforgivable. So this Debo Samuel decision, even though it's about one player, is really about our philosophy as an organization. It's about how we prioritize our cap space. It's about how we balance win now versus build for the future. And it's about whether we trust Adam Peters to find value elsewhere if Debo walks. And honestly, fam, I trust Peters. He's shown he knows what he's doing. He's shown he can spot talent. So if he decides Debo's not worth the price, I'll back that. And if he decides to bring him back, I'll back that too. Because at the end of the day, Peters has more info than we do. He knows the cap situation. He knows the market. He knows what Debo's asking for. But man, this is going to be a tough call. And no matter what happens, there's going to be debate. There's going to be fans saying, we should have kept him, or we should have let him go. That's just how free agency works, bro. You never know if you made the right move until you see the results on the field. So buckle up, fam. Because this offseason is going to be a roller coaster, and the Debo Samuel decision is just the beginning. All right, Commanders Nation, that's a wrap for today. But bro, do you realize how stacked this offseason is? We're talking about a full-on rebuild of the defensive coaching staff with Deroney Jones taking over. We're talking about the possibility of landing an elite edge rusher like Trey Hendrickson to completely change our pass rush. And we're talking about a decision on Debo Samuel that's literally going to define how we use our cap space and how we build this roster for 2020-6. Each one of these stories, on its own, is huge. But together, fam, together, they represent the future of this franchise. They represent whether we're going to get back to being contenders or stay stuck in mediocrity. And that's what makes this moment so exciting and so terrifying at the same time. Dan Quinn is betting on his future. Adam Peters is putting his reputation on the line. And we, the fans, are just hoping these moves get us back to where we belong, fighting for the NFC East, fighting for the playoffs, fighting for a Super Bowl. So fam, if you made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. Drop a like if you enjoyed the breakdown. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments, what do you think about the Daronte Jones hire? Should we go all in on Trey Hendrickson? Would you bring Debo Samuel back? Or let him walk? I want to hear your takes, bro, because at the end of the day, this is OUR franchise. And we all have a voice in how we feel about these moves. And remember, fam, the offseason is just getting started. Free agency is coming up fast. The draft is right behind it. And every day there's going to be news, rumors, and moves. So stay locked in, stay informed, and most of all, keep the faith. Because even though 2025 was painful, 2026 can be different. 2026 can be OUR year. But only if we make the right moves now. I single quotes LL catch you in the next video, Commanders Nation. Let's get it. HTTR.